Premier Doug Ford has called Chinese electric vehicles spy vehicles.
You know, when you get on your cell phone, it's the Chinese that are going to be listening to your, and I'm not making this stuff up, they're going to be listening to your telephone conversation.
So what should and shouldn't you be worried about when you're in the driver's seat? David Shipley is the CEO and co-founder of Beauceron Security, and he joins us from Fredericton, New Brunswick. Hello, David. How are you today?
I'm well, thank you.
All right, well, let's talk about Chinese EVs. Do they present more of a security threat than EVs that are being built here in the West, or even, let's say, internet-connected vehicles?
Our focus on this discussion with Chinese EVs really centers around the potential hostility of the Chinese state towards us. But the mistake that legislators and public policymakers are making here is assuming that that hostility could only manifest itself through attacks via Chinese vehicles, which is a huge mistake. And it's about all of these internet connected vehicles, not just Chinese EVs, but cars with traditional gas or diesel engines that also have 24/7 internet connections and are now more rolling computers than they are cars.
Well, let's talk about it. Obviously, Chinese EVs, there are some legitimate concerns, as you mentioned, when we talk about the Chinese government, but what is the bigger picture when it comes to these internet-connected vehicles compared to whether or not they're electric or not, or whether or not they're built in China or not?
So we have known for almost 11 years that there are massive safety as well as privacy issues with cars made by a variety of manufacturers. In 2015, we saw Wired magazine show a video of hackers over the internet taking control of a Jeep Cherokee while the reporter drove the vehicle. And they were able to mess with the vehicle's entertainment center, turn the wipers on, blast the AC. And they turned the transmission into a park mode while driving on the highway. And if you watch this video, you can hear Andy Greenberg's panic start in his voice. In a parking lot, they demonstrated how they could remotely disable the brakes and take control of the steering. That was a decade ago. Last year, researchers showed a 2020 Nissan Leaf could be hacked via a Bluetooth connection, establishing the ability to remote back in, again, over the internet via a cellular modem, and again, could take physical control of the vehicle. And it took Nissan 18 months to fix it. That Jeep Cherokee bug, by the way, affected more than just Jeep Cherokees. It affected a whole range of Stellantis vehicles. There were about 1 million cars that had to get a recall to prevent being hacked over the internet. And researchers are showing bugs, big security bugs in cars every single year, just with what they're able to figure out now, let alone with what AI is now going to enable them to find.
I don't know many people in my life right now who are driving a 1996 Honda Civic, with crank windows. Everyone seems to be connected. Can we get a better sense of how many vehicles are actually connected to the internet?
According to my research, about 47% of all cars on Canadian roads today are connected to the internet 24/7. And you can tell if your car has an app that enables you to remote start, unlock the doors, get vehicle diagnostics, that car is connected to the internet. I had a 2015 Chevrolet Sonic, and it had this 4G cellular connectivity baked into it. And GM was gathering tons of data. So this isn't just about Teslas. Cars that almost go back a decade have been doing this. 90% of new cars sold in Canada today have this 24/7 internet connection. And there are a variety of business reasons, legitimate and some not so legitimate from an end customer perspective, why they're pushing internet connectivity down our throats.
Question, is that something you can turn off on the consumer end? If I was concerned, and at the end of the day, we don't want to be alarmists here, but is that something that if I am concerned about, can I turn it off?
No, there is no easy way for people to turn off. And that's the fundamental first point I've made to legislators, is that it is not technologically complex to build in the capacity via hardware, not via software, because you can't trust software. Software can lie to you and say, no, no, it's turned off, and it's not. So either be a physical switch or a fuse dedicated in the car's fuse box that an owner could easily identify to pull the plug. And there are lots of legitimate reasons why you'd want to do that. First, let's imagine there's a widespread vulnerability. Let's take an example of Canada's own success story, QNX, which is made by BlackBerry and is the operating system for more than 230 million cars. If it has a critical vulnerability and it's going to take some time to safely patch it and get that recall done, we may want to be in a position where we could put out public news and say, if you own one of the following model cars, here's what you do so you can still drive your car safely. And we don't have that capability. In fact, thanks to US legislation mandating remote kill switches over the internet into car manufacturers, we're actually heading in the exact opposite policy direction where people don't have the control to do this. And the legislators' intents here are admirable from certain public policy standpoints. So if people haven't paid fines or they're remiss in, say, child support payments, maybe they can have their car disabled as some kind of a public policy lever, which sounds cool until GM gets hacked by China and 7 million cars don't start that day. And if we're thinking this sounds science fiction-y,
It does.
a car security manufacturer in Russia called Delta, which made a security system that could remotely disable the engine, was hacked by an unknown group. We can probably draw conclusions as to who did it. And cars were not starting, and cars that were driving, drivers reported the engine stopping. So it's already happened.
From what I gather, you are less worried about espionage and more worried about bad actors, and that can come in a variety of ways. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Well, so when it comes to physical safety, this is where people can be killed. When we saw that Julia Roberts, Marchand Allais, a fantastic dystopian cyber attack movie, What We Leave Behind,
Yeah.
and all these Teslas slamming into each other, driving themselves, blocking all the exits on an off ramp, I would very much like to leave that in the realm of dramatic science fiction. I mean, we are pushing the pedal down to make it real. And that seems like a stupid, dumb idea. And not only that, police forces across this country do not have the capability to do forensic analysis. And even nationally, we don't have the capacity in a lab to do the forensic analysis. So we are going to have people killed by intimate partners or others by injecting software bugs into their cars. It's possible, it's plausible, there's motive, and we wouldn't have the ability to even know what's happening. So if we can reasonably foresee these disasters, why are we doing it? And if you're listening to this and saying, well, why wouldn't the car manufacturers care about this? Because they care more about other things, and I'll talk about those in a minute. And those touch more on the privacy and consumer rights stuff. But car manufacturers, over their entire modern history, have consistently shown us they will prioritize profits over safety. Remember, these are the folks that brought us the side-mounted gas tank on pickup trucks, that decided that making certain changes to engineering designs for a low incremental cost weren't worth it to them, even though they could reasonably anticipate up to 1,000 deaths per year. So this industry has shown us that they can't self-regulate in the past. That zebra has not changed its stripes. So we do need reasonable government regulation. And it's because the business drivers behind this data are so powerful.
I was talking about power. I do have to ask, what role does artificial intelligence play into this? When we're talking about sort of, you give that example of the cheap Cherokee, that was quite a while ago. How quickly can people do some of the things that you're saying?
So the two researchers behind the Jeep Cherokee hack, Chris Valasek and I apologize, I can't remember the other gentleman's name. These were experienced, well-educated, professional hackers, ethical hackers Charlie Miller and Chris Valasek knew exactly what they were doing. Today, we're hearing stories and we're seeing examples of AI models that have distilled that expertise and could make it available to someone who is far less experienced. And that's where the danger blossoms from just being nation states with their elite hacking teams, like China's amazing hacking teams through their Ministry of State Security. to an embittered 17-year-old who's been radicalized by groups of misanthropes. That's the people that just hate other humans through groups like 764 online and just want to see if they can kill some innocent people. And that's my first point. But legislators, honestly, Jan, they keep going back to the privacy and the espionage. And honestly, spying's going to happen. It's the great game. And you can be smart about it and say, okay, maybe internet connected vehicles shouldn't be in sensitive military or government sites. China did it, banned Teslas years ago for good reason. But spying isn't our biggest concern. It's the potential abuse and manipulation of data by corporations and governments in ways that fundamentally harm Canadian rights.
With that, does Canada have the security infrastructure and the professional personnel to deal with some of what you have mentioned today?
Not even remotely close. You know, I listened to a legislator. I've testified twice in the last 2 months to parliamentary committees about this issue of internet connected car safety. And my frustration could not be larger. To hear a politician talk about our laughably, pathetically outdated federal privacy laws like it somehow would deter corporations from abusing this data. Nope. Or that it would somehow deter China's nation-state hackers. Are you kidding me? We have a law that has not been fundamentally updated in 20 plus years, that got the most minor of updates in 2015 under the Harper government, and that fundamentally positions Canadians and Ontarians today with less rights than Europeans and Californians. How is that? How do we tolerate that? And it's because our politicians aren't motivated by these issues. But the abuses are huge. And listen, when Texas is leading the human rights, privacy rights charge, and we're lagging behind Texas, we should really shake our heads. And it was Texas's attorney general that caught several automakers illegally taking people's driving data, selling it without their consent to their insurance companies, and then they noticed their insurance rates got jacked. I mean, that's one of the risk factors we talk about this. The other risk factors with these internet connected cars, intimate partner violence. I can tell you, I've had phone calls where I have sadly had to develop a checklist of people fleeing intimate partner violence where the person they're fleeing is technologically sophisticated. And I remember walking someone through this, and they had a Subaru. This was 5 years ago. And I had to ask them, do you know if your car has this internet connected feature? And they didn't even realize it. And it did. And so their physical location was then compromised. So then they didn't just have to get rid of their computer and their smartphone. They had to ditch their car.
David, we are going to leave it there. This was really, really insightful. It makes me want to get a 1998 Honda Civic or something like that. But some really good information there. I really appreciate your time.
You're very welcome.